Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was on MSNBC with Chris Hayes and discussed what's wrong with politics and how she plans to address it. So I have 3 clips to show you here. Let's start with the first one where she is discussing her reaction to Chuck Grassley's comments in the Senate.
This was a theme today from Republicans about all these protesters there, which to me, you know, I sort of feel like yelling at an elected representative is literally a definition of a free society in like a literal sense. Like that's what a free society allows. You can yell at someone in power. They can't like come to your house and take you away.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But they didn't like it so much. I want to play you Chuck Grassley talking about mob rule and get your response.
Sure.
Take a listen.
They have encouraged mob rule. When you hear things about get in their face, bother people at every restaurant where you can find a cabinet member. These are coming from public service that ought to set an example of civility in American society. And it's been made worse by what has happened to Judge Kavanaugh.
Well, first of all, American democracy is built by the people, for the people. It is our attempt at Americans pursuing self-governance. But, you know, I think if a lot of these Republican senators are upset at the reaction that's going on, maybe they should stop running away from their town halls. Maybe they should visit their constituents. Maybe they should pick up the phone. Maybe they should answer emails. But because they are running away from the basic tenets of democracy, our job is not to preside over our communities. Our job is to listen to our communities. Our job is to serve our communities.
All right, that was great. It's so it's really odd that what Ocasio-Cortez is saying here isn't something that every other politician is saying. I mean, what she's saying here isn't crazy. Of course, politicians, of course, it's their job to serve their communities. It's not their job to preside over their communities. But that's exactly how politicians, at least on the federal level, have acted. They act like they are above everyone else. I mean, Chuck Grassley there thinks he's free from protest, free from public outrage, free from criticism. He's not. He is there to serve people, and politicians that have been in their position for so long lose sight of that. But Ocasio-Cortez is hopefully starting a wave of bringing politicians back to an era of them actually serving their communities. Now, let me show you the next clip here where Ocasio-Cortez is talking about her strategy for utilizing the power of the people.
You're also coming really as an outsider at a moment where I think people like are watching what happened today and want to storm the gates, and you're going to actually do that. So what's your plan here?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with changing our strategy around governance. You know, there's a lot of inside baseball and inside the Beltway, as you always hear that term thrown around. But there are very few organizers in Congress, and I do think that organizers operate differently. It's a different kind of strategy, and what it is really about organizing and really thinking about that word, organizing, segmenting people, being strategic in their actions, in really bringing together a cohesive strategy of putting pressure on the chamber instead of only focusing on the pressures inside the chamber.
That's really interesting thought.
Okay, so some more great points here from Ocasio-Cortez. She really breaks down the new strategy in how to push policy through as opposed to the old strategy. So the old strategy is all about compromising with other members in Congress or in the Senate to get members to pass your bill. So the old strategy is all about working within the confines of DC to try and get things done. The new strategy is actual organizing, using outside force, using people power, protest to push policy through, to shine a light on issues that need to be addressed. And Ocasio-Cortez brings that organizing with her, not only to win, to actually achieve her seat, but also when she is in Congress, using that people power to actually push policy forward, continue with that people power. So it's really, I would say, you know, a new way of doing things, but it's also the old way of doing things. Before corporations took power, it used to be about the people. It used to be about serving the people. And hopefully, as I said, Ocasio-Cortez is going to bring that new or that old view back and make it a focus of actually serving real people. Now, let me show you the last clip here. And it's really the #1 reason that conservatives, Republicans, even liberals and Democrats fear Ocasio-Cortez.
That is part of why we've been so successful in the district, is because people understand that our campaign and my candidacy has a very specific point of view, but also in part, actually largely in part, because I do not take any corporate lobbyist money. They know that I'm working for them. They know that they can call my office and pick up the phone and say, hey, you know, this is something that we disagree with, and that I have an obligation to listen to my community. Really what we're seeing here with Kavanaugh, with all of this stuff, is just a complete abdication of responsibility, of our responsibility as representatives. When you are at the point where you are blaming your own constituents and calling your own constituents a mob, that is the exact opposite of being a representative. That is the exact opposite of being a public servant. And that tells me that those folks, anybody, regardless of your party, if you have that attitude, you gotta go.
Corporate money. That's it. Big money that influences these politicians, almost all of these politicians. Ocasio-Cortez does not have that on her. Her only drive is to serve her actual community. The people that voted for her, that donated to her, as she only takes small individual contributions. So by not relying on corporate PACs or corporate money or big money, she has now been freed up to respond to actual issues that face real people in America. This is why not only conservatives, but Democrats are afraid of her, because she brings a whole new face to the game, a whole new strategy. If other politicians, other candidates can win their races this way, and we are seeing other Justice Democrats potentially going to be in Congress alongside her, it's going to be an entire wave of new politicians acting in Congress by actually serving their communities and not listening to big donors. So it's an entirely new way of doing things. And this is why people are afraid of her. So just to actually address the last thing she said there, because I think it's such a great point. So in response to Grassley calling his own constituents or people in America as part of a mob for getting angry about their votes on Kavanaugh, she said, quote, "It's the exact opposite of being a public servant. And if you have that attitude, regardless of party, you got to go." Again, showing you why Democrats and not just Republicans are afraid of her. She's aware that, look, I don't care what label you have on you. If you're not serving actual voters, then you have to leave, because you have lost sight of what being a public servant is. A public servant is not about serving big money. It's about serving the voters. So as long as we continue to have more politicians like Ocasio-Cortez in Congress, and I think we will, then it's going to be a complete transformation of how politics in the U.S. is done. But it's going to be a few years until this actual movement takes over Congress, or the House and the Senate. But it's a start. She's one. There's going to be a few others like Rashida Tlaib and a number of governors that will potentially also have this sort of same view as well. So it's a slow start, but this is how you get it rolling. And people are going to fear these politicians because they are actually serving real people.